Okay, welcome back, boys and girls. Chapter 10. It's called The Confluence of the Mattawa. And if I could share with you where exactly they are at this point, please bear with me. All right, remember, they started here in Lachine, Ontario, just real close to Montreal, and they traveled westbound on the Ottawa River. And right about here near Trout Lake, they reach what's called the confluence of the Mattawa. All right, that's the second river. All right, the Ottawa River goes away, and the Mattawa River runs into the Mattawa River runs into the Ottawa, and they take the Mattawa River to Lake Nipissing, and they traverse Lake Nipissing, then into the French River, and then to Lake Huron eventually. So right now they're meeting up with the confluence, which is where two rivers meet. The confluence of the Ottawa and the Mattawa. Okay? So this is chapter 10. The days on the Ottawa River passed like a rushing blur. Life for Pierre was reduced to water and sky and the churning paddles of the bright, proud canoes. It will get easier before you know it, Pierre, Roland insisted more times than the boy could count. But for Pierre, the days got longer and harder. A cold front moved in, and each morning there was a heavy coating of frost on the canoes and a rim of ice at the river's edge. The voyageurs woke up cursing the cold as they brushed the ice crystals from their mustaches. The bright chill reminded Pierre of Christmas when Father took him and Camille on a sleigh ride. Father hitched their plow horse to an old wooden sleigh. Wooden sledge, excuse me. And as they started up on the Spruce Line Trail, Camille and Pierre cheered. On their way home, they sang loud carols and giggled when Father drove so fast that the snow stung their cheeks and Camille's hair blew straight back and tickled Pierre's nose. Lalande reminded Pierre of the joy his father had shown that Christmas long ago. Every day was a holiday to Lalande. No matter how much the rest of the crew complained, he stayed cheerful. "There's no finer weather than this," he preached to Pierre. "No bugs, no rain. Bright mornings made for hard paddling." Just when Pierre was convinced he would see no relief from the cold, the weather suddenly changed. On their first day on the Mattawa River, they awoke to the coldest weather yet. By afternoon, however, the wind shifted to the south. The men had their shirts off, and their backs were soon glistening in the sun. That evening, as the brigade rounded a quick bend, Bellois spotted a deer swimming across the river. "Supper off the port bow," he sang out. The young doe saw the canoe bearing down and pumped her legs violently to escape. Bellois aimed his pistol and fired. Pierre winced, but there was only a click. The men, starved for meat, let out a collective groan. Recalling Bellegarde's duck soup and trying to imagine how the cook might fit a deer into his kettle, Pierre secretly cheered for the animal to escape. Bellois tossed his gun aside and grabbed a metal-shoed setting pole. He swung hard, catching the deer flush on the head. The animal went limp, and the men howled with joy. Pierre shuddered when he heard the deer's skull crack. The violence stunned him. Here was a gentle, warm day at last, he thought, spoiled by sudden blood. It wasn't that he'd never seen a deer killed. Since he turned 10, he had hunted deer and rabbits and grouse with his father. Nearly everyone in Lachine depended on wild game, especially venison, to supplement their diets. But this rude killing, made worse no doubt by Bellois' hands, violated the peace of the day. To Pierre, it was like witnessing a murder in a church. The men were totally unbothered, and on shore, a holiday atmosphere prevailed. Everyone whistled and sang as they gathered firewood. The only tense moment came when Bellegarde approached the deer carcass with his dirty knife, and Lalande yelled, "Hands off!" "The cooking's my job," Bellois insisted. Bellois added, "You tend to your soup pot." The cook withdrew, grumbling, and before the fire had even burned down the coals, Bellois and Lalande gutted, skinned, and quartered the deer. Soon the smell of roasting venison was overpowering the stale odor of boiled corn. The men looked ready to bite off a half-cooked hunk. Bellois teased them, saying, "This meat's for our canoe. You can do your own hunting." Lapastite said, "It's not funny to joke with starving men." "Who's joking?" countered Bellois. No one's ever starved on a diet of good boiled corn." Despite the teasing, there was enough meat for everyone. After one tentative taste, Pierre tore into a juicy slab, not even noticing that he burned the roof of his mouth on the sizzling fat. When he was finished, Pierre sat back and looked at the savage men around him. Emil's face was slick with grease, and his curly head was capless for a change. The back of Bellois' hands were still bloody from his butchering, but he sat, unbothered as always by his uncleanliness. The rest of the crew sat in the flickering firelight, grinning like wolves sated by a fresh kill. Lalande stood up and he patted his bulging stomach. "Oh, looks like we have a little extra cargo to Portage tomorrow, my friend." Pierre smiled and wiped the grease from his own face with his shirt sleeve. Then he crawled towards the shelter of his canoe, anxious for the comfort of sleep. That is the end of chapter 10. Wow, interesting stuff.